6 months after the Battle of Proxima Sector, the Galactic Safety Council convened for what many historians would later call the most important session in the history of interspecies cooperation. The chamber that had once been filled with fear and desperation now buzzed with something that hadn't been heard in years: optimism. Commander Zethkar stood before the assembled representatives, his forearms gesturing at a holographic display that showed the current status of the quantum tunnel network. Where once there had been red warning indicators scattered across the galaxy, now there was an almost unbroken field of green status lights. The network efficiency has improved by 400% since human teams took over maintenance operations, he announced. We have not lost a single anchor point to cascade failure in 4 months. The mortality rate for maintenance workers has dropped to zero. Zero. The word resonated through the chamber like a miracle. For decades, quantum tunnel maintenance had been synonymous with death. Now human teams were treating it as routine work. President Kaleth of the Core Worlds Alliance rose slowly from her seat. At over 3 centuries old, she had seen the rise and fall of civilizations, but she had never witnessed anything quite like humanity's impact on galactic society. Commander Zethkar, the Council would like to hear directly from the human representatives about their future plans for tunnel maintenance operations. Captain Sarah Chen stepped forward, accompanied by Dr. Park and Marcus Rodriguez. In the months since Proxima, they had become the most recognizable faces in the galaxy, but their demeanor remained as understated as ever. Honored representatives, Sarah began, we're pleased to report that the quantum tunnel network is now operating at optimal efficiency. Our teams have developed new maintenance protocols that not only prevent failures but actually improve tunnel performance over time. Dr. Park activated a technical display that showed the latest innovations in human maintenance technology. We've learned to work with quantum forces rather than against them. Our new techniques actually use the quantum variance to strengthen the tunnel structure instead of merely stabilizing it. The assembled beings studied the technical readouts with amazement. Humans hadn't just solved the maintenance crisis. They had revolutionized the entire field of quantum engineering. Ambassador Thrix of the Hive Worlds leaned forward, her compound eyes reflecting curiosity, rather than the fear that had once dominated these meetings. Dr. Park, our scientists have analyzed your reports, but we still don't understand how your people survived quantum dissolution during the Proxima operation. Such exposure should be instantly fatal to any conscious being. Dr. Park exchanged a look with Marcus before responding. Ambassador, we've discovered that consciousness is more resilient than most species believed. Under extreme conditions, human awareness can maintain coherence even when our physical forms become unstable. But how is this possible? Asked Dr. Melandra through her aquatic communication sphere. Marcus stepped forward, his expression carrying the quiet confidence that had become humanity's trademark. Honored representative, humans have been surviving impossible conditions for millions of years. We evolved on a planet that most species would consider a death world. We learned to adapt not just our bodies but our minds to circumstances that should destroy us. He gestured to the display showing Earth's statistics. Our homeworld experiences massive storms that can level continents. We have regions where the ground itself is molten rock, and areas where the cold can freeze most known substances solid. We have predators that can kill us in seconds, diseases that should wipe out our entire species, and natural disasters that occur with terrifying frequency. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth wasn't just humanity's home. It was a training ground that had prepared them for the galaxy's most dangerous challenges. What you call impossible, Marcus continued, we call Tuesday. When you offered us the deadliest job in the galaxy, we didn't see it as a suicide mission. We saw it as an interesting technical challenge. Commander Zethkar activated another display showing deployment statistics. The demand for human maintenance teams now exceeds our ability to train them. We have requests from over 200 star systems for immediate quantum tunnel repairs and upgrades. Sarah nodded. We're establishing training centers in 12 different systems to accelerate the program. But we're also working on something more ambitious. The display shifted to show a new schematic that made several representatives gasp in astonishment. It was a design for quantum tunnel networks that operated at efficiency levels previously thought impossible. We call it the Enhanced Network Protocol, Dr. Park explained. Instead of fighting quantum instability, we're designing tunnels that use that instability as a feature. These new tunnels will be faster, more stable, and actually become stronger over time. President Calith studied the schematic with the expression of someone witnessing a fundamental shift in galactic civilization. Dr. Park, if these projections are accurate, travel times between distant systems could be reduced by 90%. That's correct, ma'am. We could also establish tunnel connections to regions that were previously considered unreachable due to quantum interference. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just solved the maintenance crisis. They were about to revolutionize galactic transportation itself. There's something else, Sarah added. We've been in contact with several frontier colonies that have been isolated due to tunnel failures. With our new protocols, we can restore connections to systems that have been cut off for decades. Ambassador Thrix's antennae twitched with excitement. You could reconnect the lost colonies? Some of those systems have been isolated for over a century. We're already planning the missions, Marcus confirmed. Some of those installations will require work in quantum fields even more chaotic than what we faced at Proxima. But that's what makes it interesting. As the session continued, it became clear that humanity's impact went far beyond technical capabilities. They had introduced a new philosophy to galactic civilization, the idea that no challenge was too dangerous if the stakes were high enough and the cause was worthy. Dr. Melandra posed the question that many representatives were thinking. Captain Chen, your people have transformed what was our greatest crisis into our greatest opportunity. But what do humans want in return for these services? Sarah's response was immediate and characteristically human. We want to keep doing the work, Doctor. Give us the jobs that other species consider impossible. Point us toward the challenges that make everyone else turn away. That's where we do our best work. The chamber erupted in what could only be described as amazed laughter. Humans weren't asking for territory, resources, or political power. They were asking for the right to volunteer for the most dangerous work in the galaxy. Commander Zethkar called for formal recognition. By unanimous consent of the Galactic Safety Council, humanity is hereby designated as the primary emergency response species for all extreme environment operations. Human teams will have priority access to any situation deemed too dangerous for standard personnel. As the session concluded, representatives from dozens of species approached the human delegation with requests for assistance. There were dimensional rifts that needed stabilization, star systems threatened by quantum storms, and ancient technologies that required maintenance in environments that could kill most beings instantly. To each request, the human response was the same. When do you need us there? Later, as the formal proceedings ended, President Calith approached Sarah privately. Captain Chen, I must ask, are your people not afraid of anything? Sarah considered the question carefully. Ma'am, we're afraid of plenty of things. We're afraid of failing when people are counting on us. We're afraid of not being good enough when the stakes are high. We're afraid of backing down when someone needs help. But you're not afraid of death? Death is just another problem to solve, President Calith. And humans are very good at solving problems. As the human delegation prepared to leave for their next assignment, stabilizing a quantum rift that threatened to consume an entire star system, they carried with them something more valuable than any reward the galaxy could offer. They carried the knowledge that they had found their place in the universe, not as conquerors or rulers, but as the beings who stepped forward when others stepped back, as the species that volunteered for the jobs that needed doing, regardless of the danger. The galaxy's deadliest job had become humanity's greatest calling, and the universe was a better place because when impossible work needed doing, humans signed up without a second thought. In the depths of space, quantum tunnels hummed with perfect efficiency, maintained by beings who treated the impossible as merely another day at the office. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about Earth's children. They didn't just survive in dangerous environments, they thrived in them. 43 seconds into the assault, Marcus Rodriguez experienced something that no being in galactic history had ever survived. His quantum signature began to exist in 17 different states simultaneously. Part of him was approaching the syndicate device, part of him was floating in empty space, and part of him was somehow experiencing the birth of a star 3 billion years ago. But his mind, trained through years of impossible maintenance work, focused on the one reality that mattered, the countdown device that was about to destroy 17 star systems. Primary target acquired, he reported through the synchronized channel. Beginning shutdown sequence. Around him, the other team members were experiencing their own quantum dissolution, but their training held. Elena Torres was simultaneously reaching for the device's power coupling, while also apparently existing as a cloud of probability waves. Jenny Baker was interfacing with the control systems while experiencing time flowing backward. Tom Chen was providing covering fire against automated defenses that existed in 12 different dimensions. The Syndicate device was even more sophisticated than they had imagined. It wasn't just a quantum destabilization array. It was a weapon that turned the fundamental forces of reality itself into a tool of destruction. The beings who had built it had sacrificed their own existence to create something that could unravel the fabric of space around multiple star systems. "Control, we're inside the device," Marcus reported. "But this thing is more complex than we expected. It's not just a bomb. It's a quantum virus designed to spread cascade failures throughout the entire tunnel network." Sarah's voice crackled through the communication link. 17 seconds to quantum dissolution. "Can you disable it?" Dr. Park was working on the technical interface while simultaneously existing as a mathematical equation. "The shutdown codes are protected by quantum encryption. Normal methods would take hours to crack." "Then we don't use normal methods," Marcus replied. He began manually disconnecting power couplings while his team provided support. "Torres, can you reach the primary power core?" Elena Torres was experiencing existence from the perspective of a photon, but she managed to navigate to the device's core. "I'm here, Chief, but if I disconnect this wrong, the feedback could trigger the cascade early." "Baker, status on the control system?" Jenny Baker was simultaneously a quantum engineer and a historical event. "I can see the shutdown sequence, but it requires biometric authorization from a Syndicate commander. We need their quantum signature to complete the process. 8 seconds to quantum dissolution." The human teams had penetrated the most sophisticated weapon ever created, but they were running out of time to disable it. Around them, reality was becoming increasingly unstable as their own quantum signatures began to fade. That's when Marcus had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. "Team leaders, listen carefully," he announced. "We're going to use our own quantum dissolution as a tool. If we can synchronize our signature failures, we might be able to override the biometric locks." Dr. Park understood immediately. "You want to use our quantum breakdown to mimic Syndicate signatures." "That's actually possible. But if we're wrong about the timing, we'll trigger the cascade ourselves." 3 seconds to dissolution, Sarah announced from control. Marcus looked at his team, scattered across multiple realities but still functioning as a unit. "All teams, synchronized signature collapse in 3, 2, 1. 8 human teams simultaneously allowed their quantum signatures to fail in a coordinated pattern. For a brief moment, they existed as pure probability waves, their consciousness somehow maintaining coherence despite having no stable physical form. The Syndicate device registered their collapsed signatures as authorization from multiple commanders. Safety locks disengaged throughout the weapon systems. The countdown sequence halted with less than 2 minutes remaining before cascade initiation. "Shutdown successful," Dr. Park reported, her voice somehow reaching them despite the fact that she temporarily existed as a mathematical concept. Cascade sequence terminated, but they weren't safe yet. Without quantum anchor protection, the teams had only seconds before their dissolution became irreversible. Marcus forced his scattered consciousness to focus on the emergency reactivation procedures for their modified suits. "All teams, emergency anchor reactivation," he commanded. "Now!" One by one, the quantum anchor suits came back online, pulling the human teams back from the edge of permanent dissolution. Marcus felt his various quantum states collapse back into a single stable reality. Around him, his team members flickered back into normal existence, looking shaken but intact. "Control, this is Rodriguez's team," Marcus reported, his voice hoarse from the ordeal. "Target neutralized. All teams reporting successful anchor reactivation." The relief in Sarah's voice was audible across the galaxy. "Outstanding work, all teams!" Medical teams are standing by for quantum exposure treatment. As the human teams began their extraction from the Syndicate facility, they discovered the true scope of what they had prevented. The quantum virus wasn't designed to just destroy the Proxima sector. It was programmed to spread through the entire tunnel network, potentially collapsing galactic civilization within days. The Syndicate was planning to end everything, Dr. Park reported as she examined the device's programming. This wasn't just terrorism. It was attempted genocide on a galactic scale. Commander Zethkar's voice joined the communication channel. Chief Rodriguez, I'm reading reports that your teams maintained consciousness during quantum dissolution. Is this accurate? Marcus considered the question carefully. What they had experienced went beyond the known limits of what any conscious being could survive. Commander, we did what we had to do. The details aren't important, but the details were important. Word of what the humans had accomplished spread throughout the galaxy within hours. They had not only survived exposure to forces that should have destroyed them instantly, they had remained functional and coordinated while existing in multiple quantum states. Simultaneously, Dr. Melandra of the Depths Coalition sent a message that summarized the galaxy's reaction. We have studied consciousness across 47 different species for centuries. What your people accomplished today should be impossible. Consciousness cannot maintain coherence during quantum dissolution. Yet your teams not only survived but completed their mission while existing as probability waves. The human response was typically understated. Sarah Chen's official report simply noted, mission accomplished. All personnel accounted for. Syndicate device neutralized. Quantum tunnel network stable. But the beings who had monitored the operation knew they had witnessed something unprecedented. Humans had proven that their minds could function in conditions that transcended the normal limits of reality itself. As the teams returned to Station Prime for medical evaluation and debriefing, the galaxy began to understand that humanity brought more than just courage and determination to dangerous work. They brought a fundamental resilience that allowed them to remain human, even when the universe tried to unmake them. The Veil Syndicate's plan had failed, but their attack had revealed something remarkable about Earth's children. When faced with forces that could rewrite the laws of physics, humans didn't just adapt. They found ways to use those forces as tools. Marcus Rodriguez stood in the medical bay, undergoing quantum exposure treatment when a young Vorthon engineer approached him. Chief Rodriguez, the engineer said nervously, I've been studying the sensor logs from your mission. According to our instruments, you and your team ceased to exist for approximately 4 seconds during the assault. How did you continue to function? Marcus looked at the young engineer with the patient expression of someone who had spent his career explaining the obvious. Son, existing is optional. Getting the job done isn't. The engineer walked away more confused than before. But across the galaxy, other beings were beginning to understand what that statement meant. Humans had found a way to make the impossible merely difficult, and the galaxy was a safer place because of it. The quantum storm that erupted around Proxima Anchor Point 5 was unlike anything the galaxy had ever recorded. As Marcus Rodriguez's team approached the interference source, reality itself seemed to rebel against their presence. Their modified anchor suits were holding, but the readings showed stress levels that should have been impossible to survive. Control. This is Rodriguez's team, Marcus reported through the crackling communication link. We found their base of operations. The Syndicate has constructed some kind of quantum amplification array directly inside the anchor field. On Station Prime, Sarah Chen stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The Syndicate hadn't just placed their sabotage device near the anchor points. They had built an entire facility within the quantum distortion fields themselves. It was a strategy so insane that no species had ever considered it possible. How are they surviving in there? Dr. Park asked, her voice tight with concern for the teams in the field. They're not, came Elena Torres's voice from Anchor Point 2. We're reading massive life support failures throughout their facility. They built this as a suicide mission. They knew they wouldn't survive the deployment. The implications hit everyone in the operations center simultaneously. The Veil Syndicate had sent their people to certain death to collapse the Proxima tunnel network. It was an act of terrorism on a galactic scale, carried out by beings who had accepted their own destruction as the price of revenge against galactic civilization. Captain, called Jenny Baker from her position near Anchor Point 4. We're detecting some kind of countdown sequence. The Syndicate device isn't just destabilizing the fields. It's building toward a massive quantum cascade that will take out all 5 anchor points simultaneously. Sarah felt ice forming in her stomach. A quantum cascade of that magnitude wouldn't just destroy the anchor points. It would create an expanding wave of quantum destruction that could reach nearby star systems. Time to cascade initiation? She asked. Based on the energy buildup patterns, approximately 90 minutes. Dr. Park calculated 90 minutes to prevent a disaster that could kill billions of beings across 17 star systems. The human teams were spread across 5 different anchor points, each dealing with quantum fields that were becoming more chaotic by the minute. All teams, priority update, Sarah announced. The Syndicate device is preparing to trigger a cascade reaction that will destroy multiple star systems. We need to shut it down before cascade initiation. Marcus's response came through heavy static. Understood, Control. But we have a problem. The device is protected by the most intense quantum field any of us have ever encountered. Our anchor suits are rated for 20 minutes in normal distortion fields. In this environment, we're looking at maybe 5 minutes before suit failure. 5 minutes. Even for humans, that wasn't enough time to penetrate a heavily defended position and disable a complex sabotage device. But giving up wasn't in their vocabulary. What do you need? Sarah asked. We need to link all 8 teams into a coordinated assault, Marcus replied. If we can synchronize our approach across all 5 anchor points, we might be able to create enough quantum interference to weaken their defenses. Dr. Park looked up from her calculations. Sarah, what they're suggesting is theoretically possible, but it would require perfect timing across 5 different quantum fields. One mistake could scatter our people across multiple dimensions. It's either that or watch 17 star systems get destroyed, Sarah replied grimly. Marcus, you have authorization for coordinated assault. What do you need from us? Link all team communications through a quantum synchronized channel. We need to coordinate our movements down to the nanosecond. As Dr. Park worked to establish the synchronized communication network, reports continued to pour in from the field teams. The Syndicate facility was more extensive than anyone had imagined. They had essentially built a fortress within the quantum distortion fields, using the chaotic forces as both weapon and shield. This is incredible, reported Tom Chen from Anchor Point 1. They've found a way to harness quantum variance as a power source. No wonder they could survive in here long enough to build this thing. It won't matter how clever they were if we can't stop that countdown, Torres responded from her position. I'm reading massive energy spikes from the central array. Whatever they're planning, it's going to happen whether anyone's alive to see it or not. The quantum synchronized communication channel came online with a harmonic tone that seemed to resonate through space itself. Suddenly, all 8 team leaders could hear each other clearly despite being separated by chaotic quantum fields. All teams, this is Rodriguez, Marcus announced. Here's the plan. We approach from 8 different vectors simultaneously. The Syndicate device is using the quantum variance to shield itself. But if we can create enough coordinated interference, we can create windows of vulnerability. What kind of interference? Asked Lisa Park from her technical support position. We're going to turn our anchor suits inside out, Dr. Park explained over the comm. Instead of stabilizing our quantum signatures, we're going to deliberately destabilize them in a coordinated pattern. It should create enough chaos to disrupt their defensive field. The silence that followed was profound. What Dr. Park was suggesting went against every safety protocol that had ever been written. Deliberately destabilizing their quantum anchor suits would leave the teams completely vulnerable to the chaotic forces around them. How long would we have without anchor protection? Torres asked. In fields this intense, maybe 60 seconds before quantum dissolution becomes irreversible, Dr. Park replied honestly. 60 seconds to penetrate an enemy fortress, disable a doomsday device, and escape before the fundamental forces of the universe tore them apart at the molecular level. Even by human standards, it was an insane plan. I like it, Marcus said, and Sarah could hear the grim smile in his voice. 60 seconds is plenty of time if we know what we're doing. All teams, sound off for coordinated destabilization assault, Sarah called out. One by one, the 8 team leaders confirmed their readiness. No one hesitated. No one suggested alternatives. They had signed up for the most dangerous job in the galaxy, and they were prepared to see it through to the end. Synchronized destabilization in 10 seconds, Dr. Park announced. Remember, people, once you drop anchor protection, you have 60 seconds before quantum dissolution becomes fatal. Use them well. Sarah watched the tactical display as 8 human teams prepared to do something that no beings in galactic history had ever attempted. They were about to voluntarily expose themselves to forces that could scatter their atoms across multiple realities. trusting in their training, their equipment, and each other to save billions of lives. 5 seconds. Dr. Park counted down. 4, 3, 2, 1. Destabilization initiated. On the display, the quantum signatures of all 8 teams suddenly vanished. For a terrifying moment, Sarah thought they had lost everyone. Then new signals appeared, chaotic, unstable, but moving with purpose toward the Syndicate facility. The humans had dropped every protection they had and were charging into the heart of quantum chaos itself. 60 seconds to quantum dissolution, Dr. Park announced, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were witnessing. All teams are showing stable advancement toward target. Through the synchronized communication channel, Sarah could hear the teams coordinating their assault in real time. They moved with the precision of a military operation and the improvisation skills that made humans unique in the galaxy. Breach in defensive field detected, Marcus reported. Teams 3 and 7 proceed to primary target. All other teams maintain interference pattern. The next 60 seconds would determine whether humanity had found a way to achieve the impossible, or whether they had simply found a new way to die for their principles. Either way, the galaxy would never forget what they had tried to do. Word of the human success spread through the galaxy, faster than quantum tunnel communications. Within 2 standard weeks, requests for human maintenance teams were arriving from every major star system. The Galactic Safety Council found themselves in the unusual position of having more volunteers than they could train and deploy. Captain Sarah, Chen stood in the newly constructed Human Operations Center on Station Prime, reviewing deployment schedules with Commander Zethkar. The holographic display showed 43 active maintenance operations across the galaxy, each one staffed by human crews who had completed the accelerated training program. "Your people have exceeded every expectation," Zethkar admitted, his forearms gesturing at the success statistics floating in the air around them. "Maintenance efficiency is up 300%, and the mortality rate has dropped to less than 1%. It's remarkable." Sarah nodded, but her expression remained focused on a particular section of the display. "Commander, we have a problem developing in the Proxima sector. 3 of our teams have reported unusual readings from the anchor points there." The display zoomed in on the Proxima sector, where 5 quantum tunnels formed a critical hub for shipping routes to the outer colonies. The energy readings showed patterns that made even Sarah frown with concern. "What kind of unusual readings?" Zethkar asked. "The quantum fields are evolving," Sarah explained. "Normally, quantum distortion around anchor points follows predictable patterns. But in Proxima, the fields are becoming more complex, more chaotic. Our teams are reporting field variations that shouldn't be possible." Dr. Park joined the conversation from across the operations center. She had been promoted to Chief of Human Maintenance Operations after her success at Anchor Point 7. "We think someone or something is deliberately destabilizing the Proxima anchors. The pattern is too organized to be natural evolution." This was precisely the kind of news that Zethkar had been dreading. The quantum tunnel network was more than just transportation infrastructure. It was the foundation of galactic civilization. If someone was sabotaging the anchor points, the implications went far beyond maintenance challenges. "Who would do such a thing?" he asked. "Every species in the galaxy depends on the tunnel network." Sarah's expression darkened. "Not every species, Commander. The Veil Syndicate has been opposed to the tunnel network since its construction. They prefer the chaos of isolated star systems and independent trade routes. The Veil Syndicate was a loose alliance of pirate fleets, rogue colonies, and criminal organizations that operated in the spaces between civilized systems. They had always opposed large-scale galactic cooperation, preferring the lawless frontier where they could operate without interference. If the Syndicate is behind this," Dr. Park said grimly, "they're not just trying to disrupt transportation. They're trying to collapse galactic civilization itself." Marcus Rodriguez's voice crackled over the communication system from his position near Proxima Anchor Point 3. "Control, we're seeing some seriously weird stuff out here. The quantum field isn't just unstable, it's actively hostile. Something is pushing back against our equipment." Sarah activated the direct communication link. "Marcus, what do you mean by pushing back?" "I mean the field is responding to our presence like it's alive, Captain. When we try to stabilize one section, another section destabilizes in a way that seems specifically designed to counter our efforts. This isn't random quantum variance, this is intelligence." Dr. Park pulled up the real-time sensor data from Marcus's location. The readings confirmed what he was reporting. The quantum field around Proxima Anchor Point 3 was exhibiting patterns that suggested active interference from an external source. Marcus, pull your team back to minimum safe distance, Sarah ordered. We need to figure out what we're dealing with before anyone gets hurt. But even as she spoke, alarms began sounding throughout the operations center. The display lit up with emergency indicators from all 5 anchor points in the Proxima sector. Multiple cascade failures detected, announced the station's AI. Quantum field integrity dropping rapidly across all Proxima anchor points. Sethkar stared at the display in horror. If all 5 anchor points failed simultaneously, it would cut off 17 star systems from the rest of the galaxy. Millions of beings would be stranded, and the economic impact would be catastrophic. How long before complete failure? Sarah asked. At current destabilization rates, approximately 4 hours, the AI responded. 4 hours to prevent the collapse of an entire sector of galactic civilization. Most species would have evacuated the area and prepared for the worst. But Sarah was already formulating a plan that would have seemed insane to any other beings in the galaxy. Dr. Park, how many teams do we have available for immediate deployment? 8 teams are currently on standby. But Sarah, if the Syndicate is using some kind of quantum interference device, sending our people into those fields could be suicide. The interference could disrupt their anchor suits. Sarah turned to Marcus's communication channel. Marcus, I need an honest assessment. Can your team handle working in an actively hostile quantum field? There was a pause before Marcus responded. When he did, his voice carried the kind of grim determination that other species had learned to associate with humans facing impossible odds. Captain, we didn't sign up for the easy jobs. If someone's trying to collapse the tunnel network, we're not going to let them succeed without a fight. That's not what I asked, Chief. Yes, ma'am, we can handle it, but we're going to need to get creative. This isn't standard maintenance anymore. This is quantum field combat. Quantum field combat. The term didn't exist in any species' vocabulary except humanity's, because no other beings would consider fighting a battle inside forces that could rewrite the laws of physics. All teams, this is Operations Control, Sarah announced over the general communication channel. We have a situation in Proxima Sector. Someone is actively sabotaging the anchor points, and we have 4 hours to stop them. This is voluntary deployment. Anyone who wants to withdraw will face no consequences. The response was immediate and unanimous. 8 team leaders reported ready for deployment within minutes. No one withdrew. Dr. Park began coordinating the technical aspects of the operation. We'll need to modify the quantum anchor suits to handle active interference. The Syndicate device is probably generating some kind of counter-resonance pattern. How long for the modifications? Sarah asked. 30 minutes if we work fast. Do it. Marcus, your team is already on site. Can you identify the source of the interference? Marcus's response came through heavy static as the quantum interference intensified. We're tracking it down now, Captain. Whatever they're using, it's big and it's well hidden, but we'll find it. As the human teams prepared for what would become known as the Battle of Proxima Sector, none of them fully understood the historical significance of what they were about to attempt. They were about to become the first beings in galactic history to engage in armed conflict within quantum distortion fields. The Veil Syndicate had chosen their battlefield well. They knew that no sane species would risk their people in such an environment, but they had made one critical error in their calculations. They didn't understand humans. All teams report ready for deployment, Dr. Park announced. Modified anchor suits are performing within acceptable parameters. Sarah looked at the tactical display one last time. 8 human teams were about to enter the most dangerous environment imaginable to fight an enemy that could manipulate the very fabric of reality itself. Deploy all teams, she ordered. Let's show the galaxy what humans do when someone threatens our friends. Inside the quantum distortion field, reality behaved like a living thing. Marcus Rodriguez had experienced many hostile environments during his career, but nothing quite prepared him for the sensation of existing in multiple states simultaneously. Through his quantum anchor suit's display, he could see his own hand appearing to exist in 3 different positions at once, while the coupling array they needed to repair flickered between several different configurations. Readings are wild down here, reported Dr. Park over the comm system. The quantum variance is spiking every few seconds. No wonder the other species couldn't get stable tool contact. Marcus anchored himself to a maintenance platform, that seemed to exist mostly in their current reality. Around him, his team spread out with the practiced efficiency of workers who had trained for this exact scenario thousands of times. The training hadn't been easy. They had spent months in simulation chambers that replicated quantum fields, radiation exposure, and gravitational anomalies that would kill most beings instantly. "Torres, how's your anchor holding?" Marcus called to his second-in-command. Elena Torres was working on what appeared to be a control panel that kept shifting between solid matter and pure energy. "Stable for now, Chief. These suits are performing better than expected. I'm reading 19 minutes of anchor time remaining. 19 minutes was longer than most species could survive in normal spacesuits, let alone in a quantum distortion field. But for the humans, it represented a comfortable working window. They had learned to think in terms of getting the job done right rather than simply surviving long enough to attempt it. Baker, status on the primary coupling? Jenny Baker was the team's youngest member, but she had volunteered for quantum maintenance work after spending 5 years maintaining equipment inside active nuclear reactors. "The coupling's definitely misaligned, Chief. But it's not just mechanical, the quantum resonance pattern is wrong. Someone's been trying to fix this with standard tools." Marcus could see the problem immediately. Previous maintenance teams had attempted to force the coupling back into alignment using conventional methods. In normal space, this might have worked. But in a quantum field, forcing physical components to conform could actually worsen the underlying resonance issues. "What do you think, Doc?" Marcus asked Dr. Park. Dr. Park was running her scanner along the primary anchor structure, her movements careful but not fearful. The previous teams were thinking in terms of mechanical engineering. But this isn't really a mechanical problem anymore. The quantum field has essentially turned this into a physics puzzle. This was exactly the kind of challenge that humans excelled at solving. While other species tried to work around the quantum effects or shield themselves from them, the human team had designed their approach to work with the chaotic forces rather than against them. "All right, people, remember your training," Marcus announced. "We're not trying to impose order on chaos. We're finding the pattern within the chaos and using it." The team shifted to what they called adaptive mode. Instead of following a rigid procedure, they began to observe the quantum fluctuations and time their work to coincide with moments of relative stability. It was like surfing, but the waves were reality itself. Torres found the rhythm first. "There's a pattern here, Chief. The coupling wants to align itself every 47 seconds. The field strength drops just enough to allow manual adjustment." "I see it too," Baker confirmed. "If we time our movements with the fluctuation cycle, we can actually use the quantum variance to help seat the coupling properly." Dr. Park was already adjusting her tools to match the field oscillations. "This is brilliant. The quantum field isn't fighting the coupling. The coupling is fighting the field. We just need to help them find harmony." Watching the human team work was like observing a completely different philosophy of engineering. Where other species viewed the quantum field as an enemy to be conquered or endured, the humans treated it as a force of nature to be understood and cooperated with. They moved with the field's rhythm, used its fluctuations to their advantage, and worked together with an improvisational skill that amazed the monitoring crew back on the station. "Commander Veltar," came Dr. Park's voice over the comm, "we're going to attempt something that might look dangerous from your sensors. We're going to deliberately destabilize the local field in order to reset the coupling's quantum signature." Back on the station, Veltar's monitoring crew went silent. Deliberately destabilizing a quantum field was exactly the kind of action that had led to several previous disasters. Her sensor readings showed that such an action could cause a cascade failure that might destroy the entire anchor point. "Dr. Park, our models suggest that destabilizing the field could cause a cascade reaction. Are you certain this is safe?" There was a pause before Marcus responded. "Commander, safety is relative out here. What we're planning is controlled destabilization, like a controlled explosion. We've done this before with other types of field dynamics. The humans had indeed practiced similar techniques in Earth's most dangerous environments. They had learned to trigger controlled avalanches to prevent larger ones, to deliberately breach certain containment systems to prevent catastrophic failures, and to use dangerous forces as tools rather than simply trying to avoid them. Beginning field destabilization in 3, 2, 1. On the station's monitors, the quantum field around anchor point 7 suddenly erupted into chaos. The neat, predictable patterns of energy became a storm of interacting forces that should have torn apart anything within a dozen kilometers. But the human team wasn't trying to survive the storm, they were riding it. Now, Dr. Park shouted over the comm. Coupling alignment window is open! The team moved with perfect coordination, each member performing their assigned task while the quantum field raged around them. Torres guided the primary coupling into its correct position, while Baker fine-tuned the resonance frequency. Dr. Park monitored the field dynamics to ensure they didn't trigger a genuine cascade failure, while Marcus coordinated the overall operation. For 30 seconds, they worked within forces that could have scattered their atoms across multiple dimensions. Then suddenly the field stabilized. The coupling locked into place with a harmonic resonance that rang through the station's sensors like a perfect musical note. Field stabilization complete, Dr. Park reported, her voice calm despite what they had just accomplished. Coupling alignment is now optimal. Quantum tunnel efficiency should return to normal parameters. On the monitoring station, Veltar stared at her displays in disbelief. The anchor point readings showed perfect stability for the first time in months. The quantum tunnel was operating at 104% efficiency, better than it had performed when it was first constructed. Chief Rodriguez, she called over the comm, your team just accomplished in 20 minutes what our best crews couldn't manage in months of attempts. How is this possible? Marcus's response carried that characteristic human mixture of competence and casual confidence. Commander, we've learned that the universe doesn't care about our limitations. It only cares about what we're willing to do to overcome them. As the human team prepared to return to the station, Veltar realized that she was witnessing more than just superior technology or training. These beings approached impossible challenges with a mindset that no other species had developed. They didn't see the quantum field as an enemy or an obstacle. They saw it as a problem to be solved, and they had just proven that the galaxy's most dangerous job might not be impossible after all. The shuttle docked with the station, and the human team emerged from their quantum anchor suits looking tired but satisfied. They began immediately documenting their procedures and discussing improvements for the next maintenance run. How soon can you tackle Anchor Point 12? Veltar found herself asking. Marcus consulted his schedule display. Give us 6 hours to rest and resupply. We'll be ready for the next one, 6 hours. Most species needed weeks to recover from even a failed attempt at quantum maintenance. These humans were treating it like a regular work shift. 3 standard months later, the first human work crew arrived at Maintenance Station Omega-7. The station orbited dangerously close to a quantum tunnel anchor, where reality itself seemed to flicker and bend. The humans came aboard a ship that looked nothing like the sleek, efficiency-focused vessels that most species preferred. Their craft appeared to be built with redundancy in mind. Thick armor plating, multiple backup systems, and what looked like repair equipment welded directly to the hull. Station Commander Veltar watched through the observation deck as the human ship docked. She was Vorthan, like Commander Zethkar, but she had spent most of her career managing maintenance operations. She had seen too many good workers die in the quantum fields, and the idea of watching an entire new species march to their deaths made her stomach acids churn. The airlock cycled, and the first human stepped onto the station. He was tall by most species standards, wearing a basic environmental suit that looked surprisingly simple compared to the advanced protective gear other species used. Behind him came 19 more humans, each carrying equipment that Veltar didn't immediately recognize. Commander Veltar? The lead human's voice was calm and steady. I'm Marcus Rodriguez, crew chief for this operation. Thanks for having us aboard. Veltar studied the human carefully. She had expected to see fear, or at least the kind of nervous energy that most workers showed before their first tunnel maintenance run. Instead, Marcus seemed relaxed, almost casual. His team was quietly unloading their gear and chatting among themselves as if they were preparing for routine work. Chief Rodriguez, I must ask, does your team fully understand what they're about to attempt? The quantum field around Anchor Point 7 has already claimed 4 maintenance crews this cycle. Marcus nodded, checking something on a handheld device. We've studied all the incident reports. Nasty stuff. The quantum cascade that took out the crystalline team last month was particularly brutal. And you're not concerned? Oh, we're concerned. Marcus looked up from his device with what Veltar was learning to recognize as a human smile. But being concerned and being afraid are different things. Fear makes you hesitate, and hesitation gets you killed out there. Another human, A woman with graying hair and numerous scars on her visible skin approached them. "Commander, I'm Dr. Lisa Park, the team's chief engineer. Would it be possible to review the real-time sensor data from the anchor point?" Veltar led them to the station's primary monitoring center. The main display showed Anchor Point 7 in all its terrifying glory. The quantum tunnel entrance hung in space like a wound in reality, surrounded by fields of energy that shifted between colors that had no names. Space itself rippled around the anchor, and occasionally, brief tears in the fabric of reality would appear and disappear. "The main coupling array needs realignment," Dr. Park said, studying the display with the same calm attention that other beings might give to a routine maintenance manual. "The quantum resonance is about 15% off optimal. That's what's causing the instabilities." Veltar's forearms gestured helplessly at the display. "The coupling array is located directly within the primary distortion field. Our best estimates suggest that any worker will have approximately 4 minutes of functionality before the quantum effects begin to cause cellular breakdown." 4 minutes, Marcus repeated thoughtfully. "That's actually better than we expected based on the reports." Several of the station's regular crew had gathered to watch this conversation. They represented different species, but they all shared the same expression of disbelief. These humans were discussing a suicide mission as if it were a minor technical challenge. "Chief Rodriguez," Veltar said carefully, "perhaps you don't understand. We're not talking about radiation that can be shielded against or heat that can be dissipated. The quantum field doesn't just damage your body. It can cause parts of you to exist in multiple states simultaneously, or scatter your molecular structure across different dimensions." Dr. Park looked up from the sensor readings. "Oh, we understand perfectly. That's why we brought these." She gestured to her team, who were assembling what looked like metallic harnesses covered in blinking lights. "Quantum anchor suits," Marcus explained. "Our own design. They don't try to block the quantum effects, that's impossible. Instead, they lock your quantum signature in place for a limited time. Think of it as a temporary anchor to this reality." The station crew exchanged looks. No other species had even attempted such an approach. The standard method was to use the strongest possible shielding and work as quickly as possible before the protection failed. "How long do they last?" Veltar asked. "In a field this intense? Maybe 20 minutes before they need to reset," Dr. Park said casually. "But that should be enough time to do the job properly instead of rushing through it." 20 minutes. The best shielded suits from the most advanced species gave workers 4 minutes at most. And these humans were talking about 20 minutes of exposure to forces that could rewrite the laws of physics. "There's something else," Marcus added, strapping on one of the quantum anchor suits. "We've been training for this kind of work for decades." "Decades?" Veltar's translator struggled with her confused clicking. "But your species only achieved spaceflight a few years ago." Dr. Park laughed, a sound that seemed oddly cheerful given their current situation. "Chief, we've been working in impossible environments since before we left our home planet. Deep ocean trenches where the pressure should crush any living thing, underground caverns filled with toxic gases, the cores of nuclear reactors, the inside of active volcanoes." Marcus nodded while checking his suit's systems. "The galaxy's most dangerous job? This is just Tuesday for us." The human team finished their preparations with an efficiency that impressed even Veltar's experienced crew. They moved with the kind of coordination that only came from extensive training. But there was also an element of improvisation that other species rarely displayed. When one team member's equipment showed a minor malfunction, 2 others immediately suggested alternative approaches. "All right, people," Marcus announced to his team. "Standard deep exposure protocol. Anchor pairs, backup monitoring, and remember, if something goes wrong, get creative. The universe doesn't always follow the textbook." As the human team prepared to enter the shuttle that would take them to the anchor point, Veltar realized she was witnessing something unprecedented. Every other species approached the quantum fields with resignation, accepting that they were probably going to die but hoping they could complete their work first. The humans seemed to view the deadly environment as simply another challenge to overcome. "Chief Rodriguez," she called out, as the team headed for the shuttle bay. "What happens if your quantum anchor suits fail?" Marcus paused at the entrance and looked back with that disturbing human smile. "Then we improvise, Commander. Humans are really good at improvising." The shuttle bay doors opened, revealing the twisted reality around Anchor Point 7. The human team filed into their craft without hesitation, talking casually among themselves about technical specifications and equipment checks. As their shuttle disappeared into the quantum distortion field, Veltar found herself doing something she hadn't done in years of maintenance operations. She felt hopeful. The monitoring station tracked the human shuttle as it approached the anchor point. The quantum interference made communication difficult, but Veltar could see their suit signals holding steady, even as they entered the most dangerous areas. For the first time since the maintenance crisis began, workers weren't dying within the first few minutes of exposure. Maybe, just maybe, these strange beings from the outer rim had found a way to do the impossible. The Galactic Safety Council had been in emergency session for 3 standard cycles. Around the curved table sat representatives from 47 different species, each more worried than the last. The holographic display in the center showed a map of known space, dotted with red warning indicators that seemed to multiply by the hour. Commander Zethkar of the Vorthan Empire cleared his 4 throats nervously. His species had survived countless wars and natural disasters, but even they trembled at what lay before them. "The situation grows worse each rotation," he announced, his translator converting his clicking sounds into standard galactic speech. "We have lost another maintenance station near the Kepler anomaly. That makes 17 in the last month." The assembled beings shifted uncomfortably. Some had tentacles that writhed with anxiety. Others had fur that stood on end, and a few simply glowed dimmer than usual. They all knew what those maintenance stations meant for galactic civilization. Dr. Melandra, the lead scientist from the Aquatic Depths Coalition, projected her thoughts through the water-filled communication sphere. "The quantum tunnels are destabilizing faster than our models predicted. Without constant maintenance, the entire galactic transportation network will collapse within 2 years, maybe less. The quantum tunnels were the lifeblood of their civilization. These artificial wormholes connected distant star systems, allowing instant travel across thousands of light years. But they required constant upkeep, and the maintenance work had to be done manually. No artificial intelligence could handle the complex quantum fluctuations, and remote operation was impossible due to the interference. The problem was simple, yet terrifying. The maintenance work had to be performed in the most dangerous environments imaginable. Workers had to venture into areas where space itself was unstable, where radiation levels could kill most beings instantly, and where the laws of physics often behaved in unexpected ways. The mortality rate was approaching 90%. "We cannot ask our people to take such risks," declared Ambassador Thrix from the insectoid hive worlds. Her compound eyes reflected the grim statistics floating in the air around them. "My species values the collective above all, but we cannot sacrifice entire generations for this work." Similar murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The crystalline beings of Shard Prime had already withdrawn their workers after losing an entire team to quantum dissolution. The gas-based Nebula Collective had tried using their most adaptable forms, but even they couldn't survive the hostile conditions for more than a few minutes. Each species had tried in their own way. The heavily armored fortress folk had lasted the longest, but even their nearly indestructible shells couldn't protect them from the fundamental forces at work near the quantum tunnel anchors. The energy beings had hoped their natural state would provide immunity, but they found themselves scattered across dimensions when exposed to the chaotic fields. President Kaleth of the Core Worlds Alliance stood slowly, her ancient bones creaking audibly through the chamber's perfect acoustics. She had lived through 4 galactic conflicts and the formation of their current peaceful civilization. Her voice carried the weight of centuries when she spoke. "In all my years, I have never seen our people face such a choice. We either watch our civilization crumble as the tunnels fail, or we send our young to certain death trying to maintain them. There must be another way." The chamber fell silent except for the various breathing, humming, and bubbling sounds of the different species. Everyone had run countless simulations and explored every possible solution. Robotic systems failed within hours of exposure. Shielding technology couldn't protect against the fundamental chaos that surrounded the tunnel anchors. Even the most advanced environmental suits were useless against forces that could rewrite reality itself. That's when the communication system chimed with an incoming transmission. The display showed a small yellow star system on the outer rim of explored space. It was barely notable except for one fact: it housed a recently contacted species that had just achieved faster-than-light travel. "Incoming. Message from the Sol System," announced the chamber's AI. "Species. Designation: human. Priority: standard diplomatic. Contact. Commander Zethkar almost dismissed the call automatically. What could a newly contacted species possibly offer in their current crisis? But something made him pause. Perhaps it was desperation, or maybe just curiosity about these beings who had achieved spaceflight despite living on a planet that most species would consider a death world. Put them through, he decided. The holographic display shifted to show a human face. The being looked remarkably similar to several species in the chamber, with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth arranged in a familiar pattern. But there was something different about this one's expression. Where most beings showed careful diplomacy and concern, this human seemed almost excited. "Greetings, Galactic Safety Council," the human said in surprisingly clear standard speech. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen, representing the United Earth Colonial Authority. We've been monitoring your public broadcasts about the maintenance crisis, and we'd like to volunteer our services." The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Several beings began speaking at once in their native languages, before remembering to use their translators. Commander Zethkar raised one of his forearms for silence. "Captain Chen, I appreciate your willingness to help, but I'm not sure you understand the severity of the situation. The mortality rate for tunnel maintenance workers is nearly 90%. We're talking about work in environments that can kill most beings within seconds of exposure." Captain Chen's expression didn't change. If anything, she seemed more interested. "We've reviewed your public safety reports. The radiation levels, the gravitational anomalies, the quantum instabilities. We understand the risks. That's exactly why we're volunteering." Dr. Melandra's confusion was evident even through her aquatic communication medium. "Captain, your species has just achieved spaceflight. Surely you have other priorities than risking your people in our maintenance crisis." "With respect, Doctor, you don't know humans very well yet." Sarah's smile was both friendly and slightly unsettling. "We have a saying on Earth, someone has to do it. When we see a job that needs doing, especially one that others consider impossible or too dangerous, that's usually when we get most interested." The chamber fell silent again. None of the assembled beings quite knew how to respond to such an attitude. In their experience, newly spacefaring species were typically cautious, focused on their own development, and certainly not eager to volunteer for the most dangerous work in the galaxy. "Captain Chen," President Kaleth said carefully, "are you saying that your people would willingly take on maintenance duties that have killed thousands of our most experienced workers?" "That's exactly what I'm saying, ma'am. In fact, we've already started training volunteers. We have over 10,000 applicants for the first 100 positions." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Ambassador Thrix's mandibles clicking in disbelief.